Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to ask something that a lot of you I know are going to groan about, but please stand one more time. Everybody on their feet. All right, I'm going to ask what I usually like to ask when I'm preaching. New perspective, new start, new day, new grace, new mercies. Find a different seat than the one you're sitting in right now. Anywhere in the building. Today I get the privilege and honor of talking about something that's extremely important to me, and that's worship. I'll just say this morning and this is something that was with me before, but this morning I was sitting out there, and if you notice, Mr. Ernst switched the sides of the stage that we're on, which is great because it's new perspective, new horizon, right? And I looked at the cross, and something about it was different. And if you know anything about me, I'm a little, a kind word would be particular. But the way this is always draped, I always fixed it, and then he kind of changed it. It's very, proportional on both sides, and am I in the wrong place? Okay. But then I was sitting out there, and I saw this big M. And this really fit because earlier this week, I had a strong word from the Lord when I knew I was talking about worship. So much to say, and I didn't know what direction God was going to send me. But one thing I knew for sure is that Mount Mission is destined to be a place of worship. And I hope today we understand what that means. Is that we can step into that. But it's a word for all of us because our lives are built for the sole purpose of giving God glory. And we have so much around us to give him that glory that we should never stop talking. It should never stop pouring out of us because he's always pouring into us. So where's it going to go? If we hold on to it and we don't share this goodness, then it just dies. I wrote this in my note this week. I don't remember where I was. Oh, I remember. A lot of you will probably not realize all the things God is doing because you're not pouring out. And that might sound contradictory, like to learn something you have to take in, right? You're waiting for God to speak. But so much of it requires pouring out first. Yeah, and there's this concept of being empty before he can fill us up. And the thing that struck me was, I've started, because I knew I was preaching, I've talked to a lot of people this week about asking for prayer or just talking, getting the ball moving on worship and a lot of things about that. And what ended up coming out was people's testimonies. People saying how God was moving in their life. And some of it in the form of prophecy, some of it in the form of testimony, but I started to realize connections are made. And let me give you an example. I knew what direction I was going to go with this sermon, kinda. And so I started working on these slides. And if you knew anything about me last year, you knew I hated the idea of Google Docs and Google Slides and everything Google. It's not my language. I'm not a computer person already, and to teach me a new system of looking at things outside of Microsoft, I don't understand. It was very intimidating to me, but we had a seminar come in and teach us about this, and I said, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to fight it anymore. I'm just going to be willing to learn Google Docs, and it's a mountain ahead of me still, but I've come a long way, and I'm really impressed with myself. So much that I said, I'm going to use Google Slides in my sermon, and I'm not usually a slides person. But I decided I was going to do that, so I prepared it in advance, and then yesterday morning, I was just reading my devotional, and it had nothing to do with what I was talking about, so I thought. I was in the Old Testament in 2 Chronicles and reading about the story of Jehoshaphat. And immediately I just felt like, oh, there's something in this. And for weeks, I was telling Miss Beery in a text just a couple days ago, I don't know, for some reason, God keeps bringing me back to Jehoshaphat, and I don't know why. It wasn't pertaining to anything in my life, and when I would read it, I knew there was some good word in it, but I didn't really connect the dots. And yesterday morning, I was at the cabin doing my devotional on the porch, and my wife came in from exercising, and she sat down. She asked me how the sermon was going. I said, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm pulling a Mr. Peters. I'm going to change it last minute. You know, he does this quite often. He'll prepare something, and then the Lord will just say, nope, do this. And he willingly just says, okay, let's go. And he follows the Spirit. And I said, I can't believe I'm going to do this, because I like to plan and prepare. And I worked really hard on Google Slides, so come on, Lord. But I told Jess, I think I'm supposed to preach on Jehoshaphat, but I'm not sure. And she just sort of said, yeah, I'll affirm that for you right now, because I was just exercising and listening to a podcast, and it was on Jehoshaphat. And I didn't really know how it pertains to worship, but I felt like God was telling me to tell you, speak on Jehoshaphat. And I was like, okay, that's all I need to hear. Now, what if I had never opened my mouth? What if I had never spoken to pour out what God's put in me? What if my wife had never spoken to pour out what God had put in her? I would never have received that word. I would never have known how God is moving in all of this. So much of Mount Mission is closed-lipped about Christ. We take it in all day. We sit in Bible class. We come to church. We do devotions. And the majority of the students will just sit there. The majority of the staff will just sit there. But how many times do we pour out from what God has put inside us? And I guarantee you start pouring out and testifying to all the goodness that's going on in your life, you will be shocked and amazed how the people around you will respond and say, wow, I needed that. Now I know the Lord is moving. And they'll speak in you, and you'll say, you will undeniably know that the Lord is speaking. He says that even the mountains will cry out if we don't. If you want to stay tight-lipped, that is your choice, and God gives us that right in His freedom. But even the mountains will cry out when we will not. So I want to start saying we are created to worship. We are created to pour out because the Creator is in us. Let's pray. God, I thank you for this opportunity and all that you want to say to us. I honestly don't know where I'm going. And that's a beautiful place to be, because I know we're in your word, and that's all that matters, because your word will bring the truth to the surface, Lord. So I pray for our hearts as that truth is presented to us, that whether it's up here on the stage or out there, that we are open and receptive and willing and brave and humble enough to accept it, Lord. So I thank you for your goodness. In Jesus' name, amen. After saying all that, I can still use my Google Slides. I think God sort of said, still put it in. But I have to rush through it because I really want to focus on Jehoshaphat, and I know how long-winded I could be. Okay, worship, if you look it up in the dictionary, we're going to simplify it for everybody and start down here and build up. It means to show reverence and adoration for a deity being a god. When you revere, there's fear involved. You understand there's a greater being than you, a greater power. In adoration, we sing in Christmas, "Oh, come, let us adore him." And I love, if you know John Thomas and Tommy and John Thomas Oakes, all the time, all year round, they'll break into that Christmas song. "Oh, come, let us adore him." Why is that just a Christmas song? It's not just about a baby. We should be adoring Christ for all he's done in our life. But that's what worship means. Now, most of us think of it in terms of church and Christ. But these are other things we worship. We worship money. We worship fame. Comfort. I had to put chicken and waffles up there. That's my go-to. But comfort. I want my belly to eat what my belly wants to eat. And often, and I'll speak for myself, as you can see, my God is my belly. Entertainment we seek. We worship our physical desires, whether that's food, whether that's sexual nature, anything that our body says, I want, regardless of what the Lord inside us says. We worship ourselves or we worship others. Look at the people you follow. And not just in your personal life, on social media, anywhere. Look at and ask, are we worshiping? Do we hang on the things they say? Are we afraid when someone asks us to let go of those things? There's worship there. So what does worshiping God look like? Most of us, if I were going to say worship, this is the general term for worship. Because you picture people in church singing, hands up, here I am to worship. And guess what? That is real worship. But we need to think much bigger in terms of what worship means. Because all through the Bible, we're going to look at examples of how it is much more than this. But this is a great representation of it. I know for me, music is such a big part of what God's placed inside of me to worship Him. And God's given all of us gifts and interests. And these are great. But we can use them to serve ourselves. We can use them to worship ourselves or worship others. But what He wants us to do is to use those giftings that He's put in us to worship Him. And maybe that is music. Maybe it's not. So what else does worshiping God look like? Maybe it is right here on this stage. I had some issues happen this week, and turns out I was not able to play up here, and I got to be out there, and wow, what a blessing. I felt like I got to be... there's something about being able to worship unhindered, and not that a bass guitar is a hindrance. I love being able to play and just lose myself in it, but just to release even that and say, oh, it's one less thing to hold on to and 2 extra hands to use for God other than that. This is worship. What you do unto the least of these, my brethren, you do unto me. When we think outwardly about the church, about the other people that we should be ministering to, that we should be pouring into as we see not just staff, but older students taking younger kids under their wing. This is an act of worship when it's done to glorify God. Coaching. Whether it's good or bad, right? No, he's a good coach. Because he had a good coach, right? He had a couple. I'll give Mr. Beard a little bit. But I do believe we went undefeated when he played for me, but that's not. If you can even coach that guy on the bench behind you, the Lord's hand is on you, I promise you. This was taken last year at the back-to-school party. This is Lucas, and you know what he's holding? Underwear. But if I recall, this might have been, was it Ninjago? I think it was Ninjago underwear. He loves Ninjago. That's how excited he was, and it was underwear. But even being a heart of gratitude is an act of worship. Now, I apologize if you were around our table yesterday, because this was not the look on his face. He's now at the age he's learning, oh, parties don't just mean toys and things, it's clothes. And he cried. But we're trying to cultivate that heart of thanksgiving in him. But I never want to forget, this is within him as well. Worship is this. Worship is having fun. And I really want to squelch this idea, this misconception that worship is boring. As a kid, I used to say, oh, I don't want heaven to be where we're just sitting on a cloud playing a harp with angels. Ugh. Now, there's parts of that, that's going to be pretty awesome. Because I love harmonizing, and I'm thinking about the harmonies in heaven that I get to join in on. I get to think about all the instruments and playing with proficient musicians all the time. just worshiping God. But it's so much more than that. Our fun, we can worship God. Ask ourselves, what is the root of how we're having fun, what we're doing, why we're doing it? Is it rooted in something other than the Lord? Is it rooted in evil? Because I guarantee you could corrupt this image and put her having fun in a place that is awful and that does not glorify God. And that's a different spirit. But you know what I see? I don't even know who this is. Is this a mayor? I don't know if it's Eller. Look in that face. It is just, release. It is, it's free falling through the air. That's what that is. It is release and surrender and the ecstasy that comes from release and surrender. This is what worship likes. I love it. I love it. Ms. Hood is our crazy Mount Mission fan. I love it. She is out there and does not care what she looks like. She doesn't care if she's on a slide. She wants her challengers to know she is behind them 100%. And the spirit of encouragement is an act of worship because I guarantee she is building up those players. Worship, man, these guys. You know the Johns. You know we were blessed by Miss Chisholm, Miss Julie that came this week. People that come and serve the Varneys. And just all year long we have people pouring in through our gates wanting to serve. They are worshiping the Lord in what they do. Now, we're not worshiping them for what they're doing. We're worshiping God for what He's doing in them. And so when we honor people, we do want to lift their name up, but we want to lift up even higher the name above all names, the name that puts that love in their heart. This is worship. Seeing how you kids will band together. That is, in a way, the essence of Mount Mission to me. When people come here and they're like, what is it? It's God in them for sure. But if I were going to say specifically how we see that, I see this in everything. The way you guys will just, you take one person, okay, at a lot of other places that are not Mount Mission, you take dancing. And people will, if you're at a dance, say a school dance, and everybody's out dancing by themselves, this is what you guys at Mount Mission do. One person's dancing, someone comes around, starts dancing, and suddenly you have this huddle of 30 people all dancing inwardly with one another, right? That's what you guys do. It's cool too. I mean, sometimes it's annoying, I'll be honest. But you have, like, even soccer, the way you guys band together in so many areas, this is an act of worship. Fellowship. What you do when you're just with your friends. You can worship the Lord. Fellowship is being able to share your life with someone else, to open up parts of yourself and connect, much in the way of saying what God is doing in you. Now, maybe they're just talking about how they tricked their teacher giving them an answer on a test. I don't know what they're laughing about. But I like to believe that they're discussing, the deity and the joy that they find in it. I don't know. But fellowship is a way to worship. So how are we called to worship? We see all these examples of what worship can be, that it's not just worship meaning hands up in church singing. But worship is in everything that we do because of the God that's in it. So how are we called to worship? This was read by Elton at the beginning. And this is the verse that never left me. And I have hundreds of verses written down in my notes. But this is the one that I knew God was there. And the thing that was most intimidating is I didn't understand what this verse meant, which was an opportunity for me to study this continually. But the time is coming, indeed it's here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. True worshipers worship in spirit and in truth. The Father is looking for those who will worship Him that way. For God is the Spirit. So those who worship Him must worship in spirit and truth. Now these two words, they're separate but they're the same. In spirit, There's the Spirit of the living God living in all of us. And when you're worshiping in the Spirit, you're not worshiping those things mentioned before. Self or fame or wealth or comfort or any desires we might have. But in spirit, that's with the Spirit of the Lord inside of us. And when we accept Christ, that's the blessing we have. We have the Spirit of Christ in us. You have so many people who are spiritual in this world, so many, but they're not spiritual in Him. They're spiritual because there's a spiritual realm. Whether you believe in Jehovah or not, there is a spiritual realm that you can tap into and you can worship. And there's so many people in this New Age movement and other movements where they're worshiping on a spiritual realm, but they're not worshiping the Holy Spirit. And they worship in truth. This morning, man, I was kind of overfilling with this truth of how we come to God in a heart that's honest. And how little in our lives we want the truth. There's that old movie, A Few Good Men. I think it's A Few Good Men, right? Where it's a soundbite that everyone uses, even if you haven't seen the movie, where someone says in the courtroom, "I want the truth!" And then they say, "You can't handle the truth!" And that's when this climax moment, whoa, this, Jack Nicholson or Nicholas? Which one's it called? Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson kind of loses his cool at that moment. But we don't want the truth. A lot of us are afraid of what the truth is. And that's why, Mountain Mission family, that is why so many do not have a relationship with Jesus. So many people in this room do not want a relationship with Jesus because they are afraid of the truth. They are afraid of what they think the truth is going to be. And I'm here to tell you right now, it is not what you think it is. If you are willing to put yourself in humility before the Lord, heart open, because guess what? He knows all your crap. So you can hide those things all you want. He sees you. He knows you. He still invites you. But the way we hide in front of our friends, in front of our peers, in front of our teachers, in front of our family, in front of everybody, because we can't open up and show our cracks. There's I wish I knew the name of it. I was in another devotion I was reading. There's this Chinese art where they take these vases that are cracked. And most people would see cracks and they'd say, "Oh, that's awful," and they'd get rid of it. But what they do is they fill these cracks in with metal, precious metals, like gold. And then they, I don't know the process, but once it's done, every crack you see is filled with gold. And it's this idea of showing the beauty of what the gold can do in those cracks to bring about what should be trash and make it something that is even more beautiful than the original. And that's a lot of ways the Lord wants to do with us. He takes those cracks and he's like, "Just give them to me. Let me show you how much beauty I can pour into this."